Hello and welcome to episode 240 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is the frontman from the amazing band He Is Legend. Yes, I'm joined by Schuylar Croom. I'm not just saying this now, and I've built this up over the last couple of weeks on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, but as it stands, this is my favourite interview that I've done this year and easily in my top 5 interviews of all time. This is how a podcast should be. We hit it off straight away, the chemistry was there, and me and Schuylar honestly could do podcasts forever. He's incredible, and I really can't wait to share this interview with you in just a couple of minutes' time. And as you're listening to this, get a pen and paper or just write down somewhere that you need to listen to the brand new album by this band. It's called Endless Hallway. It's only been out a week. I'm telling all my family and friends to listen to it. By family, I'm not like my, hey, Nan, listen to this. But everyone that I know. And it's unbelievable. It's my album of the year as it stands right now. I mean, there is the rest of November and December for something to come along. But it's going to take some beating. It is phenomenal. But let's touch base and talk about my last episode. On episode 239, I was joined by the frontman from Everclear, Art Alexis. This was a great interview. The response was amazing. I actually was lucky enough to go and see Everclear just this week. I got to meet Art. We sat down. We had a good chat. He loved the episode. He's seen the response and seen how well it had done. It even hit the top 20 in America, and that blew his mind and mine. So thanks to everyone that took the time to listen, for all the amazing feedback. And if you've just discovered Everclear because of this podcast, well, there's another 30 years worth of music to go back and listen to. They're amazing. The show was amazing this week, and I love everything about this band. And today, like I said, it is all about He Is Legend. This is a band that I can't claim to have been there from the start. I've only just jumped on board, but they've had a massive effect on me. And I think Schuylar is one of the best frontmen out there, one of the best songwriters, vocalists, and this band are just taking over all of my listening right now. So I want to get to this interview because I keep going on about it. I really can't wait for you to listen to it. So here's me and Schuylar talking all things He Is Legend.
Let's go down to the city, let us rip that brick by brick. Then we'll dance through the streets, no stone unturned, no wound unlit. I'll taste the darkness and you quick. I knew this place would make you sick. Then we'll dance.
Awesome. So Schuylar, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What I like to do for the audience out there is take it right back to the very start. And when you were growing up, can you tell me those first albums that you maybe bought that made you fall in love with music?
I use the word bought here loosely. I stole Antichrist Superstar from from a bookstore.
Wow.
in the mall. I grew up in a very religious family, and obviously that was frowned upon. I remember a neighbor kid told me about Korn, and to me, like having a visual mind, I would always imagine the music I was hearing. I was seeing these little like gremlin kind of people making this music. I mean, it's like, loving nu metal growing up and whatnot. Korn was just like the heaviest thing I was introduced to at maybe 10, 11, 12,
Wow.
Maybe something like that. So I remember getting Life is Peachy, and that imagery like sticks with me pretty well. I had to hide these things from my family at the time. Now, getting into my teens and late teens, it was more accepted. We came to an agreement that I was on a path, and I kind of, I don't know. I think most kids that are raised in a religious background, especially like Southern Baptist, those things, there's like a visceral element to music that you're kind of, it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because like you're given this worship music is meant to be something more than it is. So what would be the opposite? The heavy metal music would be more than it is. It's more than just the sound. So I mean, there was an imagery in my head that I gave to these bands that was like otherworldly. But it really started with like, you know, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, White Zombie, Manson, those things I really was drawn to because I was drawn to like darker elements in music. So
they're incredible foundations. Stuff like the Smashing Pumpkins, for me, one of the best out there, and I still listen to them today as much as I did 20 years ago. Just unbelievable band.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I mean, I think that was one of the things that, I mean, people wouldn't really recognize that as much as like the darker imagery of Manson and Zombie and like Korn, but the Pumpkins really disturbed my mom. And I think that she kind of, when I brought home Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, it probably intrigued her, you know, because the cover is such like nouveau, and like, you know, it's kind of set in this. I mean, one of the first concept albums that I really digested as a kid, double LP, you know, it was like really interesting, and so I'm sure that interested my mother, but she read the lyrics, and you know, like they just disturbed her. And I think for me, but then looking at it for me, I was like, I didn't understand it because it was like, it was just expression, you know, and it didn't, I mean, I understand it now, but I think back then I was just like, you don't get it. You're not, you know, you're not in the know, I guess. Like, this isn't a band for you. But yeah, so that was one of the ones where it was like, oh, this might be a problem. And then I think now she understands the art of expression through music in that way. My mother's a saint, you know. If there was ever someone that would display godliness, it would be her. Yeah, so that was I think the earliest things I can remember was, you know, getting in trouble over music. And then, you know, after we started playing, it turned into more bands like you know, Converge and the Mars Volta and At the Drive-In and things like that were like really pivotal to me wanting to be in a band. And my guitar player Adam, like, you know, my brother in music for so long now, he would turn me on to things like Meshuggah, bands that I would never necessarily listen to, because I've always been drawn to more like, you know, I was into The Cure and Joy Division and like going down this goth path in high school, and he was into Meshuggah and like Morbid Angel and stuff, you know. And so together, throwing these two things into the blender is kind of where He Is Legend was born.
And what about live music? Because, you know, you're talking about, you know, taking these records and your mom seeing the lyrics and the covers and stuff, but what was it like to try and get to a gig and see these bands perform? Can you remember those early shows that maybe you had to sneak off and go and see?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, at the beginning when we started playing with bands like Beloved and Ludacris, which was Norma Jean before, and, you know, we were doing that when maybe 16, 15, playing with, I remember playing VFW halls in the South, you know, with Zayo. And so that was I mean, I guess that must have been after. I remember, God, I want to say it was Powerman 5000, Linkin Park, POD.
Wow.
And yeah, I want to say POD was the headliner because I wasn't too into them, but I went for Linkin Park and Powerman 5000. I thought Powerman 5000 was like the coolest band because they were like all had their black light hair, you know, and they sprayed people with water guns, and it was just like kind of theater, man. I mean, not being as like punk as the other kids in high school, like I didn't know about Guar, you know. So I mean, they were like the new metal version of that, you know. You're getting sprayed with water and not slime. So yeah, we had a House of Blues venue here in the States that is in Myrtle Beach, which is about an hour from me, and so I could go there when I first got my driver's license. I mean, I saw Deftones on the Diamond Eyes tour there. I still go to shows there when there's something decent coming through. And but that's such a young, like, just remembering going by myself, like my first excursions out of town, were those. And I think like my very first show that I went to out of town, I got into a pretty bad hit and run. A guy like rear-ended me from behind, and I had a friend with me. It was a drunk driver. He was in a big white like band van, like a cargo van, and I went to see the Juliana Theory with a band called River City High, and they were playing at the New Brooklyn Tavern, which is a place we've played a million times. And I was 16. It was a 3-hour drive to Columbia from my hometown in Wilmington. And I was getting a hotel room for the first time. You know, it was like a big deal. And I was pretty young. And we just thought it was a good idea to get gas the night to fuel up before we would hit the road the next morning. And yeah, it was like 2:00 in the morning after the show, pulled out of the gas station, getting ready to hit the hotel, and like, bam, I just remember the front end of the car lifting up. And so, yeah, that was my first real, like, going to a gig experience, was just like basked in this turmoil and like,
that's not the best start, is it?
Yeah. No, never. But yeah, I was really into the Juliana Theory. I thought they were great. And I want to say that was I was probably 16, 17, maybe. Yeah,
the House of Blues, though, that venue is legendary, and
yes,
I've never been there, but my dream and like my bucket list is, for me, one of my favorite bands ever, Thrice.
Oh, cool!
I think they're just unbelievable. The way they evolve just blows my mind. But they always kind of finish their tour and play either 2 nights there. And my dream one day is to go and see that show in that incredible venue.
Those venues are great. They treat artists really well. They're very curated, and like the design is cool. It's this deep New Orleans vibe, with this kind of pop art from back in the day. And yeah, it's an intimate venue. But I mean, I saw Turbonegro and Queens of the Stone Age on the Songs for the Deaf tour at the House of Blues near me. And you get this feel of, usually there's 2 or 3 levels, but so you get this very intimate, small venue feel, but you can pack thousands of people in one. So, I mean, it's a really cool venue. They do it right. And we love playing. We've only played a few times. The one in Anaheim and the one in Orlando, like near the Disney parks. And the one near us, we've played with Seven Dust before, which, I mean, that was like a dream come true, because I grew up going to Seven Dust shows at House of Blues, and to be able to play one.
That must blow your mind.
Yeah, it's surreal. Those guys, shout out to them. They have been so great to us. They took us on their 10-year anniversary, their 20-year anniversary. And every time we see them, they're the most personal dudes. Clint and Adam are really good friends. And it's just, they're essentially mentors, and they're some of the best in the game. They have like such a loyal fan base, and yeah, we're just happy to know them. They've done a lot for us, and they're great dudes, and their music kicks ass. They're so heavy.
You mentioned Deftones, who are like one of the best as well. Like, my God, yes. Diamond Eyes is one of my favorite albums, and that band have been going over 20 years, like yourselves. And what is it, do you think, that keeps you going? Because a lot of bands fade away after the 2nd or 3rd album and can't do it anymore, or burn out, or it's just they don't realize it's not the glorious job that they dreamed of. But you guys are still going as strong as ever. You've still got that passion, that drive, like the Deftones, like Incubus, like Everclear, these bands that have done, over 20 years on the scene. I don't have a proper answer, other than the fact that if you step away for any amount of time, if you still have a kinship and music is a part of your life, you'll go back to it no matter what, I think. I mean, like, look at the pandemic and being in lockdown. The whole time we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do as a band, because, White Bat kind of got the wind taken out of its sails because of COVID. We were on this rise, and we could feel that rise happening, something happening. It was the first time that had happened for us in a while, where
the album was taking off in a way and kind of had its life of its own. And so when COVID hit and we all went home, you know, we were in the middle of the tour While She Sleeps, and we were, you know, it was a really nice rising, and we felt good. We felt like things were going to pop off. And then they were just like, yeah, go home, boys. And then we were home for 2 years. And we were just trying to decide if there was something we wanted to do. So many bands were doing like these in studio gigs, you know, or doing records or whatever. And we toyed around with the idea of that. But just, you know, right when we were getting ready to go into the studio to record, they basically put another, you know, it was around Thanksgiving, and they suggested we not gather again in the States. So we were just like, yeah, maybe it's not a good idea to like put 12 people in a room when we're not supposed to get with our 10 family members, you know? So things like that. I mean, we didn't want to put something out that had this stamp of a horrible time in the world, you know? So I think, I think when it came down to writing a new record, it was like, this is it. This is what we should be doing. You know, this is what we've always done. And yeah, maybe it breaches some of the subject matter and some of the angst that we felt, but it didn't have this like, please wear a mask. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't a part of this. So it felt better. And now that, with all the red tape and the things that, you know, the waiting game that you have to do to put out an album, we're in this position where it feels like another start to a climb of what's happening. I mean, at least people have really loved the new tunes we put out. We have 2 new tunes coming out on the 28th, and then the record comes out on November 11th. So we're hitting those marks again, where it just feels like we have a very, very amazing fan base that have kept us afloat for so long. So to answer your question and circle back on that, I think you do it for the fans. If you have a kinship with your bandmates, and there's no, hardship in that relationship, then I think you'll always return in one way or another to create, because it's a calling, I guess, when you've like banded together with people of like minds and kindred spirits. And I think any amount of time away, that's why you see these reunion shows happening, because there's an amount of nostalgia. There's an amount of like feeling young again with your brothers. When you step on stage, it's timeless. That's why the Stones can still kick around, because they're drawing on this energy that they've basically bottled and captured as a piece of like time. I'm sure when they play, Rocks Off, they feel like exactly how they did when they made that tune. Like when we play I Am Hollywood, regardless of how we feel about that song, it takes you back to when that was created, and like it's a little sliver of time for us on stage. So it feels, I think those things, unless you've done something to taint your relationship, I feel like you'll always find a way back to it. It's just human nature, I would imagine.
Do you kind of have a new perspective as well because of having 2 years off and not being able to do what you love the most, that you now don't take those shows for granted? You kind of come back stronger, thinking, I suppose some bands might have used the pandemic and time out to kind of reflect and not want it anymore. But then for bands that absolutely adore what they do, it must be like being in prison and then being released. Oh yeah,
100%. I think we've always been a kind of a DIY band. We don't get all the tours we want. We don't get to travel as much as we want. We're kind of at the mercy of like who takes us out or what we do, obviously would love to be back in the UK as much, once a year, twice a year. I think the pandemic really put separating them, to use a terrible pun, like separating the men from the boys. I think they kind of like who can still go for it. There's a lot of people dealing with mental health issues and turmoil that the road brings, and I think it really turned a spotlight on hardships on the road. So yes and no. I think maybe with the way that we travel and the lives we lead on the road, I think that stuff, with enough time off, people started to realize how, bands were the first ones taken off the road, the last ones allowed back. So we're all kind of at this point now where everything's opening back up, and we're at a position where there's so many bands on the road and so many people doing it. So many people want to get back out. A lot of people lost tons of money not being able to tour and sell t-shirts and, the real way that we make our living. So a lot of people got creative. A lot of people quit. A lot of people are now like trying to be on the road again. And I imagine that there's people that went back out and realized that they were doing a detriment to their body and doing, like kind of killing themselves on the road, and realized that life is better than that. And there's people that knew that that was where they belonged and they had to be out again. And they, just wanted to continue. So I think it's a really weird, we're in such a strange place in music right now. There's so many bands getting back together. There's so many bands breaking up. It's just a real shaky, unstable place, which the album Endless Hallway was kind of, that kind of, the title suggests what we were in, it was like, oh, here's the door, finally it's over, we can leave, and then boom, you're back in the hallway again. So that kind of stays with me now, thinking about how, because not to say that I have a doom and gloom aspect or perspective on what's going on, but you're waiting now that you know that it's possible for the world to shut down. You're like, well, when is the next time this is going to happen? So let's get it in as much as we can. If we can go out and play, let's go out and play. I like that perspective. I like feeling positive about the newness that music has right now and the new things happening in music. But I also think that there's like a resurgence of rock and roll that's happening that I want to be a part of. With the state of the world, there's always some sort of rebellion in music, and I feel like we have a place in that, and we've kind of built that up for a while now. And yeah, I'm excited about that. I think that's an interesting place that we're in right now, because bands like the Deftones, who just, the kings of what we do pretty much, they've just been doing it the best for so long. They're the ones that are inspiring, and for such a long time, it was like, who's the hot new whatever, and, you ride that wave until they're like gone, and then they have to make a new record. It's just this weird cyclical motion in music where you're only hot for so long, and then you got to reinvent yourself or come out with something new. And I don't know. I don't think that's over, because that's just the state of things and the way that we live now. But I think that we're coming into new territory where credit is given where it's due, and I feel good about it. I feel good about the future, which is, I haven't been able to say that in a long time as far as music's concerned. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I hope other people feel the same way, and I hope that it translates into, not just for He Is Legend, not for selfish purposes, but I think that all of these bands that work their asses off, that might have felt some doom and gloom of, the last 2 years of just like, what's going to happen, are now getting credit for how hard they worked to get to where they were before the pandemic. So yeah, not to make this a COVID special, but I think, I think it's worth noting that the bands that have come back so much stronger, and they have so much, because there is inspiration in darkness. I mean, we know that most of the greatest things are written about turmoil and heartbreak and loss.
As a music fan, like right now, there's some of the best records out there, bands that are coming back out. I'm just blown away by their new music. And as a person that loves seeing live music, I'm spoiled right now because there's more festivals than I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
There's more bands that I've been waiting to see that have rescheduled now and managed to get these tours. And you know, as a fan of music, maybe you'd only get to see a band like Alice in Chains once every 10 years. Now it's every year. You know, it's incredible. It's a great time. Smashing Pumpkins, who we've talked about, they're touring all the time now, and it's like, wow, like this is a great time to be a fan of good music.
And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Like, I mean, why would you do this? I think that is kind of the proof in the pudding, so to speak. You know, that these bands who have huge reasons not to continue, you know, like whether it be that they've hit a mark and they're well off, or they've lost members that are detrimental to their sound, or, you know, this or that, have not only decided that it's worth continuing, but writing new albums that rock as hard as their old stuff. It's just like, that's inspirational to me. Seeing Chains play, as you know, a few years back at Carolina Rebellion, we played and we got to watch side stage. Like, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. And it's, you know, a new iteration of Alice in Chains, like the Alice in Chains that we see today. And it's still, you know, when they played Nutshell, I'm just like weeping, you know, like
unbelievable.
And things like that is another notch for why we do this, is to be able to witness these points in the timeline of music that you would never expect to be able to see. Like, I mean, playing Furnace Fest 2 years ago when it came back was probably the first show we had done in 2 years, and being able to see so many amazing groups reconnect. And I mean, it was otherworldly. It was insane. I couldn't believe that we were playing with so many amazing bands. You know, not those reasons are little perks for being on the road, because it's not always amazing. You know, sometimes you are like on a rainy, weird night in Peoria, you know, like it's like, and people are like, yeah, you know, I've said it before, but I think there's always some excuse for why the turnout isn't great or whatever, you know. And there are days where it's just like, yeah, I don't want to go out. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I mean, you got to take those things in stride, but every show is worth it. Some shows you just happen to get to see Gang of Four, you know, like, or something like that. So it's like, yeah, it's crazy.
I can't help but notice in the background you've got a Jason mask, a Halloween mask, you've got a Shining print. I think I can keep seeing. I think on tattoo as well. So are you? Oh God, look at that. I think this is not great for a podcast. People are like, I can't see it, but
right.
I take it you're a massive film fan and horror fan.
Yeah. I've been in working in film for almost, you know, a little over a decade. Working behind the scenes, mainly in set deck, and I've worked in props. And I mean, I've been a horror fan my whole life, from a very young age. And yeah, that's just it's my guilty pleasure, or not even a guilty pleasure. I don't feel guilty about liking it. I love horror movies. I love the franchise. I love horror books, and I'm into it all. I like film in general, you know. I mean, I'm a sucker for all of it, but you know, I'm a genre guy. I like all of that. I just, you know, I grew up in the age of Blockbuster Video, you know, so I would
Me too.
walk up and down the aisles and look at the VHS tapes and, you know, read the back, and they're
the glory days, and getting to see how these ones, and then hoping they've already not been hired out, so you don't have to go through a backup, but just absolutely adoring a video and taking it home and watching it and getting that $3 or $4 worth of use out of it by watching it 3 or 4 times over a weekend. And horror's my favorite, and John Carpenter's my favorite filmmaker of all time. The Thing I think might be my favorite horror film ever. That's
a good one to have up there.
Practical effects and everything in that film, but I think we could do another episode for 2 hours on horror alone and film.
We could. We absolutely could.
Have you seen Halloween Kills yet? Sorry, Halloween Ends yet?
Yeah, I watched it the night it came out.
How are you feeling about it?
So that I have a lot of I could talk about that movie in general or that franchise in general for 2 hours. But obviously the original Carpenter film is like a masterful work of horror. He's in that the Shape, Michael Myers is in that for like less than 10 minutes. He gets less than 10 minutes of screen time in that hour and change movie. Its setups are so good, the score is so good. It really like set the bar for the rest of the franchise. That being said, every sequel has had its weird tropes, and to me, Halloween Ends, they shot Halloween Kills and the original Halloween in my hometown.
Amazing.
I didn't get to work on them, but I worked at a bar and they were all there every night. I'd see Danny and David. They would come in and drink at the bar.
That's so good.
They also, Danny McBride, they shot Eastbound and Down here as well. So
that's one of my favorite shows ever. Kenny fucking Powers is the man.
Yeah. So I worked on some episodes of that in the set deck department. But yeah, so I think he has an affinity for Wilmington, and David Gordon Green, like they're North Carolina guys. They come from I think they went to school in Winston-Salem here. So it's nice that they brought those movies to the Carolinas. This movie feels like Halloween 6 to me with Paul Rudd, you know, and how it just kind of has, like, they even had the tropes of like the horror and the radio DJ playing, and they did that all through the other one, through Halloween 6. It feels very horror sequel, like let's stray off the path and go somewhere else. But you want to imagine how many times can you just show Michael Myers in a mask, like getting up, coming back, and like doing his thing. So yeah, it wasn't my favorite of the franchise by far. I like Halloween 3.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I have the masks up there. I don't know.
Yeah, they're so iconic.
Yeah,
fucking love it.
Yeah, but I love that movie because if it wasn't called Halloween, it would have just been, if it was just called Season of the Witch, and it would have been like, it probably would have gotten way more acclaim than everybody being pissed off that there wasn't a Michael Myers in it. I think David did a really cool job with these. I'm not particularly a fan of Rob Zombie's Halloween remakes.
Nobody is.
Honestly, when I heard that he was doing that, I was like, you can't touch this franchise. You know what I mean? It just felt like you can't.
That's the Holy Grail. Step away. Yeah.
Really, honestly. And just the way 2 picks up into, I think 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 are my childhood. You know what I mean? Like I loved 3, but it doesn't have that storyline. And I loved Michael Myers as a character. I loved that he never ran. He sat up slowly. He was methodical, and he was supposed to be the devil incarnate. So veering off of that storyline like Zombie did to give him like a human background, I didn't like. And when Halloween, the remake, came out, and it was supposed to be like 40 years after the original. Yeah. And none of the others had taken place, I thought was like a bold choice. But I came around to it and was like, this is cool. It's cool to see this franchise continue. There'll probably always be a Jason movie. There'll always be a Freddy movie. Though, like somebody is going to capitalize on these franchises. Of course. 'Cause, it's like, so yeah, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It is what it is. It's a Halloween movie. I mean, it's the same thing as like, I went and saw this new Terrifier 2. I don't know if you've seen those.
I've got the previews being sent to me, but it's not out here for another week. But I've heard it's fucking wild.
It's wild, but like I bet you can guess what happens. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's like what do you expect from a horror film? You know, I mean, unless you're doing like high art or highbrow horror,
Yeah.
like say like anything A24 really is putting out, or like Jordan Peele's style of like
Yeah.
thought-provoking horror. If you're going to see a slasher, just expect it to be what it is, and if it's better than what you expected, then you don't walk out disappointed. But people who are expecting anything more than Michael Myers, slashing around and whatever, I don't know. He's come back from so much. Like, how are we to like, I mean, he will come back again.
He will.
No matter how you
couple of
kill
years
him.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, no matter how you kill him, they'll find a way back around, or you just rewrite the whole story and bring it back out in a different way, like everybody else does. Yeah, I'm doing the 31 days of Halloween and watching a horror film a night.
It's tough, isn't it, to try and do it every day?
It is, and it's tough to choose. And I'm trying to watch ones I've either haven't watched in a long time, or like I'm not really going for any rhyme or reason. I didn't want to stick to a script or like choose by like looking at some card, like watch one with a girl killer or whatever. So I'm literally just like throwing darts.
Awesome.
Last night I watched Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which is
nice.
Like the fourth movie out of 9.
I love it.
Yeah, with Corey, is it Corey Feldman?
Yeah. Yes,
yeah. What a ridiculous movie! Like, what
Absolute
a ridiculous
madness.
movie. Yeah, they're not my favorite franchise either, but it's still, you respect what it is, because it's true to form. And I feel the same way about Halloween. It's like, you get Michael Myers in it. If somebody remakes Season of the Witch, now that would be an interesting play. Because I mean, it's just so far out. You'd have to do it with like iPhone filters or something, like make it. I don't know.
It will happen one day.
Of course it will. Of course it will. And with the with Joe Bob Briggs, I don't know if you're a fan of him, but he has a show on Shudder called The Last Drive-In. Shudder's a streaming app.
Yeah.
But he did Monster Vision back in the day, and he knows everything about the genre, everything, and he'll break into movies. He hosts these movies, and he'll break in and tell you all these factoids about what's happening, and really turn an hour and a half movie into a 3-hour watch. Because he just goes on these diatribes about who was screwing who on set and how he got into this stuff. And like, yeah, I love it too. And it really got me and my girlfriend through the pandemic, because it would come on every Friday night at 9, and it was, how long has it been since you had something to watch on TV
consistently at the same time?
Yeah, at the same time every so it was like that alone was just like, wow, like it's not like we're going out drinking or like partying at all. We're at home. So like at least on Friday nights at 9, we know we're gonna all night we're just gonna watch horror movies with this guy running his mouth. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. And just diving into these terrible movies, some really bad B movies, some amazing. I mean, he did everything from like Tourist Trap to Hellraiser. He's done tons and tons and tons, like Slumber Party Massacres, and like
I own them all.
Great.
I got all the Arrow collection, so it's I have all these really bad movies.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I'm a fan. I think from the terrible stuff to like the high art stuff. I mean, I'm a huge Hellraiser fan. I have been for forever and ever. I'll show you my little
beautiful.
my little box here. I thought the new Hellraiser was great. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it was really beautiful and like tastefully done.
It was done with respect, and that's what's important on a franchise like that.
Yeah, 100%. And the fact that Clive Barker got so much say in it, and if you've ever read any of like the Books of Blood or anything like that, like it's just so visceral. So it's just, there's so much in it that's like hard to write, like the smells and things like that. It's just like really good, and I think it shows through. And in the Hellraiser series that he was involved in. I think 1 and 2 are great, and I really like this last one. So yeah, I would suggest those for anybody who's interested in that franchise. I think the Hellraiser is just so foreign to me, and again, being raised Southern Baptist, like that was like a whole a level on top of the fact that it was forbidden. It was also like these kings of the underworld that came out to like give you pleasure and pain at the same time, which was like this, which obviously is like a metaphor for like, you know, the sex clubs that he would go to and like witness all these things. It has this like high, this like undertone of like forbidden sex as well. That would like, I mean, it was just, that was where I was at. Like, I was like, Hellraiser was the one for me. Let me ask you what your favorite shitty horror movie is.
I don't know if it counts as
like,
horror, but I love shit films, and one of my favorites is Tommy Wiseau's The Room. I think.
Oh yeah, God,
absolutely.
yeah.
I've had him on the podcast a couple of times, and he's a real crazy wild cat. But you're gonna laugh at me now, but I love the really bad films like Troll 2.
I think Troll 2 inherently, because I remember watching that very young, and the last time I watched it, it had been maybe a decade, and I put it on, and I had such a strange, like, such a weird feeling when the girl starts to turn into the tree, you know, or the boy starts to turn into the tree.
So weird.
And I remembered, like, I was like correlating them scenes in that movie with legend lyrics from like Suck Out the Poison that I had written, and I was like, oh, I was pulling from this imagery, because I mean, I'll write, you know, it's almost like fairy tale fan fiction that I've done for years through our lyrics, and just like trying to relate those through metaphor. But I pull off imagery that the music will well up in me. And I swear to God, Troll 2 like has some deep-seated weirdness of like the trees are alive, like from Mushroom River, and all these weird things. Like I swear that I was like subliminally influenced by that movie. And I've talked about that before to a friend. It was just like, I had this moment where I was like, oh my God, that's where these ideas came from. Was Neil Bog.
Yeah, I fucking love it. And my favorite is Mac and Me.
Oh yeah.
Just dreadful, man. But like
yeah,
it's so bad, but it's so bad it's good. I can sit and watch that film and enjoy it for the fact of like the amount of product placement and McDonald's advert. It's basically a McDonald's advert, and I had the director on from that as well, just because I was obsessed with this film and thought like, how can you do this so soon after E.T. and get away with it? And
right. Well, that talked about the weird, you know, like I always thought that was weird back when I was wandering the aisles of Blockbuster. Was like, they almost make these movies to dupe you into grabbing the box, because you might have saw a trailer for E.T. and it stuck in your head like, oh, I have to see that in 4 months when it comes out. And then you're wandering the aisles of Blockbuster and you see Mac and Me. and it singed in your brain like, is that the Alien movie out with the little boy and the alien?
Looks like
I saw
it, yeah.
I need to watch this. But you would always see him with like, anytime there was a monster movie, like a Jaws or a Godzilla, you would see this weird, like, I especially remember it with like Sharknado being a thing.
Yes, massively.
And it was like Shark or something, like a hurricane that was a shark. It's just like, oh, let's make that movie and put it out before the other movie and we can ride the wave. That's a thing in film.
So common now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it happens in music in like a very genuine way with like wearing influences, and you're like, that band just sounds like that other band, but it's like that's exactly what they're doing in film, is just like trying to ride the wave of that. I think it's always been so funny to me to see like there's an exorcism movie that's called like Exorcism and not Exorcist, and you're duped into renting it, and you're like, that wasn't very good. What are people
and the budget wasn't even like $1 million, but somehow they've got this kind of photoshopped artwork on the front, and you just get drawn in, and then you're like, why is it literally like 2 weeks before? Like, how did they get this done?
Yeah, that's always been so bizarre to me. I guess that's the whole trauma model but like Troma was just, they just did things their own way. I mean, Toxic Avenger is so good, so good. A lot of those movies are good. Tammy and the T-Rex is like so far out. It like you watch this movie and you're like, how did they make this movie? Like, who thought of this movie, and how did it get made? And you're like, oh, Troma made it. And it's okay, that makes sense now. It's like, yeah, I've always been fascinated with that. And when I was younger, it was obvious, like I was like spotting the red herring. I'm like, that's not real. That's not the movie. They're just ripping off this or that. Yeah, those are great, man. I wish I would have been collecting those, as all the B movies or like C movies that came out 2 months before the movie they're trying to rip off.
I'm going to do it after today's podcast. I'm going to sit there and see if there's a website of like archives of what came out as the big film, like you said, Godzilla, and then like Kingzilla out the
there's got to be somebody's made that list. I would love to see that list. If you see it, definitely share.
If not, I'm going to make it.
We should because I mean, now I'm just having all these crazy memories of like I feel like there was like a Tarzan one. There's always one, and now they probably still happen, but you just have to like glide over it on your Amazon Prime or whatever to see that it's still being done. But with the way streaming is now, that movie might actually take off quicker and get more success than the other movie because filmmaking has changed so drastically.
But even the big leagues would be doing it. Like Ants would come out, and then a week later it's like A Bug's Life, and you're like, oh, okay. So I'm seeing that you're both going head to head, and then there'd be like, I don't know, like a Shark Tale, and then it'd be like Finding Nemo, and you're like, this is too similar, and it's like it's happening too often. It was like, so it's DreamWorks version versus Disney or Pixar.
That's so true. The Bug's Life and Ants. That's like. That really is. That's one of the best examples of that because you have two multi-million-dollar companies going head to head to try to make a movie that could catch the audience of the other movie in or out of the theater.
It happens all the time as well. I'm always seeing it when I'm looking on the Sky Store or Netflix. I'm like, oh yeah, like literally that came out the same year. But they're like, if you want to talk about bugs, we're going to do it as well.
Right. Man, what a crazy, we've definitely got to find that list. Somebody has done it. Somebody has the adjacent movie.
I want to see the posters next door to each other as like left and right,
Yeah, I just remember the Sharknado thing being like so absurd. And to like see a movie that was called like A Different Kind of Storm that was involving sharks. It was like, how could you even sit down and write another story about a storm pulling sharks out of the water and shooting them like missiles into car, like insane. But
I like also the way it spins off as well, because then it gives you the rights to them have like two-headed shark attack and killer sharks from outer space and all this, and it's like, okay, now you've just opened the doors to anyone that can come up with quite a quirky title, and it just work.
And then it's obviously just everything's piggybacking on the fact that Shark Week made money, and people are just like, oh, Shark Week, well, let's make a movie about sharks. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Jaws. I know that's sacrilege to say.
I might end the podcast now because it's literally my I think it's my favorite all-time film, as in a whole film. That doesn't mean that the genre. I think when I watched that film, I went recently to the 3D showing. I think in fact it's made in the 70s. What Spielberg did and how he did it, and the performances from Robert Shaw and everybody, I think it's a masterpiece. But I want to know why you don't like it, because that's.
I agree with you. I mean, I do not think that it's a bad movie. I do think it's a masterpiece, and I'm not like saying I'm not a fan doesn't mean I hate it. I don't. No. It's not my movie. Like I grew up in the ocean. Like I'm on the coast, and I've been a beach boy, so. Yeah, I think mainly for me when I was younger watching it, it just wasn't scary to me. I didn't have that, like, I've always said that if I was going to die, I was probably going to get eaten by a shark. So I was like, because I was always at the beach. I think, I just think it didn't scare me, but I do appreciate, I mean, obviously Spielberg is the master, and like even some of the shots that he has, if you know anything about camera work, he does these shots that are so unnecessary like it took him a lot of work to set up, like when they're talking and he's up above him on the thing and he's talking down to them, and
Quint's looking down at the others.
yeah, he's looking down at them, and he moves the camera when he absolutely doesn't have to. It probably took another day to shoot that. When the camera moves, but it feels so seamless in the way that it rakes over. I don't know. I love him. I love his camera work. I love everything about what he does. It's just Jaws is like the subject matter wasn't for me, because I wasn't afraid of. I had a reverence for animals, you know, and so it was like, if you're in the ocean and the shark's around, he deserves to eat you. If you're the weaker prey. It wasn't my movie for sure, but I respect the shit out of it. I love. I mean, Close Encounters is like
unbelievable.
That's probably one of my. I'd put that in probably my top 10, just because it's so true to life as far as the way we would probably approach aliens. Like thinking we had this understanding of what was going on. But
I haven't seen it for years. I really need to watch that again. I bought some special 4K edition, and Richard Dreyfuss is in it again, and I've not seen that film honestly for so long.
Yeah, watch it again, because they had a futurist or someone as a consultant, or someone in the CIA was a consultant, and I saw something recently where they said that it was so true to what we know now to be like our knowledge of other planets, or UAPs or whatever they call them, that they got it so right so long ago making this movie that they had to have some information of what we know
what was to
be
come.
true. And they also say that if we had to contact or like this communicate with another life form, the easiest way for us to do that would be through music, through sound. And I just that part in general, the whole scene where they're doing the notes or whatever,
it's unbelievable.
I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah, I know that's my film tonight now.
Oh yeah, dude, I might even put a bend in the list and watch that as a horror. But that's kind of how I would quote Jaws as a horror. Yeah, because I just think like there's no malicious intent in Jaws. That thing just wants to eat,
So and it's his job, and it's what he does. So if you're going to provoke him and go and sort of wiggle your feet around him, he's going to have a bite.
Exactly. But as another thing, I mean, obviously having this tie to imagery. I remember when they're cutting open the shark and pulling out the license plate and everything, and I think that might have been 2.
No, it's the first one, Autopsy, where they ripped them open to check if the body's in there. Yeah, so they put out the driving car plate. There's a tin, and it's like milk spinning everywhere. Yeah. That sticks with me pretty hard. I mean, that was kind of scary to me when I was younger, but that was probably the biggest scare, because I mean, I've just always grown up knowing that if there was a shark in the water and you got bit, it was your fault. Like you take a risk when you go in the ocean. So. Yeah, I mean, if he had a human brain and a knife in his hand, then we're talking about a different story. To finish this, what is your film? So people ask me, and I have to say John Carpenter's The Thing, because it's like everyone associates me with that because I always talk about it at any chance.
So good.
But what's your actual film? I mean, my favorite film ever, like as a film, is Almost Famous. Cameron Crowe, I think, produced. I've got a tattoo of his handwriting on me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, It's All Happening. He literally wrote that on my arm, and then I got it tattooed. So it's
so cool.
Like Cameron Crowe's soundtrack, the way he cast Jason Lee and Kate Hudson, and everything about that film is like, that's what I want to be. I want to be that writer for the Rolling Stone magazine and go out there and be with bands. Fucking incredible. But
man, that's a great one. That's a hard one to compete against. I think because it's been such a pivotal movie in my life. The Shining just has always spoke to me as I'm a big fan of Stephen King. I'm a big fan of Stanley Kubrick, and The Shining just has so many bells and whistles that I love. Down from Kubrick's production design and how everything's so symmetrical, so beautifully shot, and it's so painstaking to make this movie. I would probably put that up at one of my, if not number one.
Yeah.
It's very high up there. I also Hellraiser 2, The Hellbound Heart has so much amazing imagery and just so stark and like gross, but it's almost like a Tool video at times, like it's
You could
just like,
pause that film at any point and print the screen and it would make a print.
Yeah. Oh, dude,
Like,
you're not wrong.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love that movie a lot. And honestly, I'd say Monster Squad was probably one of the movies that from early age I would watch it obsessively. I wanted to have that clubhouse was like the coolest thing, so like everything about that movie, because I was maybe the age of the kids when I first saw it, and growing up loving the Universal monsters and just being a fan of all of that, it was just like, it was the Goonies for a goth kid, like it was.
I was about to say mine was Goonies, but if I wasn't on that page, all my friends were watching either like The Explorers or Stand By Me, or obviously Monster Squad. And Monster Squad and Goonies for me is like a perfect Sunday afternoon.
I agree. That was the first movie I watched for my October 31 days thing.
Beautiful.
I watched Monster Squad, and I think that's one of the movies that I just will watch year round. It's like you said, it's a Sunday afternoon. You throw it on while you're washing dishes. It's got so many great one-liners. I can quote the whole thing. It's such a great movie, and it really stands up. It holds up. The practical effects are great. When the werewolf blows up out the window and then you watch his body parts come back together, that always just was like the coolest thing for me.
Practical effects are my favorite thing in the world, and that's why I love John Carpenter so much, and the time and effort he put in. And when you see stuff like Poltergeist and all the set design they did, it blows my mind how they did it. And I'm not saying people are lazy now, but it's about budget. But nobody now spends the time that you'd get on, like you see George Lucas with all the stuff for Star Wars, and John Carpenter creating that monster design of the Thing and the dog, and the way that the red beams were coming off it and attacking people. And I was like, all fucking tentacles. Hell, like it still looks good now, and it's 40 years old,
Yeah, that movie, as far as practical effects are concerned, that's the great, like the penultimate.
It is.
Movie. They're actually doing a showing of it at the theater near my house sometime this week. I made a note. I need to go back and check, because I
make that as part of your 31 days that night.
Oh yeah, I absolutely plan on it. They're also doing Dawn of the Dead 3D, which I'm really stoked to see that next weekend. But neither one of those movies have I seen on a big screen. So
amazing.
The Thing I have to go see. I mean, it's just.
I've seen it on the big screen.
So terrifying.
5 years ago, they had a John Carpenter night in London, and they had like 7 of his films back to back, and it was mind blowing to see it on the big screen. But if you've got 11 days left of your challenge, a film I recommend, and I'm sure you've seen it, but it's one of my favorite British horrors, is Neil Marshall's The Descent.
Oh man. Terrifying movie.
Terrifying.
Love that movie.
Like I don't know. I think the second makes films good. Like that. It's not bad, the second one, but he had nothing to do with that, and he was like pushed aside. So he's been on the podcast 3 times, and again, the time they put into the costume and the way that those they're like Gollum, aren't they? Like
they are
grim monsters, and I just think the budget,
terrifying.
Yeah, the budget of that film and the way that they get those people to go in the caves, which is claustrophobic enough for me. That's my biggest fear, just being locked in a cave. Never mind then having monsters fucking trying to eat my face. So the way that film's done, it shouldn't look as good as it should it? It shouldn't look as good as that. No,
and all the twists in that, like. Spoiler alert.
Let's spoil it, but when the friend kills her, like, fuck.
Dude. And like having the necklace involved, like such a good like little niche storyline.
It's such good writing.
All of that stuff. The fact that that's done a lot, where you accidentally kill your friend because you're terrified, right? Like we've seen that in tons of movies, but the way that kill happens. And just the fact that she could have literally just said, whoops, you know, and not become sort of villain of the storyline. But the fact that she was malicious about it, like, really showed her.
It turns
it was just
everything.
like,
It turns
dude,
everything.
that movie is a 10 for sure. And
Yeah.
so the bar that me and Jesse work at, we have a screen out there, and we do movies every Monday and Tuesday through. I think they do them every day of the week now. I haven't been working there in a while since I got my job back in film, but we would do horror on the big screen outside every night of October as well, and it's usually just the bartender chooses and throws them on.
Yeah.
But The Descent was one that I played that a lot of people hadn't seen, and I was like, this is almost too scary for like a bunch of people who are like getting ripped,
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, people screaming and like, this is fucked up. So like, I think that one's great. I probably will throw that one on. I'm getting rounding out the top 10 here. Like, how am I gonna go hard on this last one? Obviously, Trick or Treat.
Yeah. I love that film.
It's so good. It's just it's making its way through theaters this year for the first time ever. It never had a theatrical release. So
do you always finish on The Shining then? Is that your kind of number one, or Halloween or something? Or
honestly, I think I do Halloween night.
Yeah.
I honestly have seen The Shining so much. I like, it's almost like one I'll just throw on to ignore. But the last time I really sat down and watched it, just like intently watched it, was in a theater. They actually did a Q&A with Kubrick's daughter, and she came to Thalian Hall, an old, really old theater here in town. Like, they do plays there, but they'll do cinema nights. And she came and she answered some questions, and it was bizarre. The first thing that they said before they took any questions, they were like, "We will not be discussing the moon landing. No questions will be answered about the moon."
Wow.
It was like, it was like, oh, you want to go ahead and just throw that answer out there really quick?
Fucking hell.
Weird. But so I obviously wanted to ask a moon question, but
do you always watch the extended cut or the standard cut? Because there's obviously the one with an extra sort of 25 minutes, the US.
I think I bought that. I had like a 4K version that I got when it came out, and I think that's probably the only copy I have now.
Yeah.
I think back then I was donating my Blu-rays to the bar whenever, it's just because you can throw on a movie up there, and it's like a full-size theater screen that we have, and it's just out in the backyard, and we have a projector, and it's just nice to, even if you don't have, I mean, we have a pretty large backyard with a patio space. So even if you don't have sound going, just to have a visual on in the backyard big, it's just like, it draws people in. And I have like all the David Lynch short films on a Criterion collection. And you can just press play on that, and you get like really crazy imagery.
I've had Sherilyn Fenn on the podcast.
Oh, really?
That took a long time to happen, but Twin Peaks, like, my God, like, it was, for me, it's royalty. I was like, if 100%. I can get Sherilyn on, like, it was a dream come true. So,
yeah, I actually told this story on another podcast, but I just think it's insane. Blue Velvet was filmed here in Wilmington, and one of the first movies of like a cult following. We've had a lot of film here in my hometown, but that's one of the ones that I was just like, whoa, like, that movie was shot here. And it's it shows you the town. Like, you can see my hometown, and like, it's really a good showcase of Wilmington. And on tour at one point, I mean, I've always had this link to David Lynch because of this, but I randomly pulled off the road and ended up in Twin Peaks. Like, and it was in the middle of the night. I drove past a sign like painted on the side of a wall, and I was, tired from driving and just pulling off, trying to find a hotel on an exit. Took an exit, drove past. I saw a painting on the side of a wall of a piece of pie and a cup of coffee, and I like thought I saw a damn fine cup of coffee. I was like, that's weird. Pulled into a hotel, and as I'm standing there trying to get these rooms at this tiny little roadside motel in the middle of nowhere, literally in Washington State, there's a painting of a mountain to my left and a painting of a mountain to my right.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I looked both ways and I was like, what is this? And he's like, this is Twin Peaks. It's where they filmed that show, Twin Peaks. You ever seen that show? I was like, no way.
Music starts playing in your head.
Yeah. The
camera pans out slowly. Yeah.
yeah. And I looked down at the carpet and zigzagged. I was just like, never saw anything of the town until the next morning. And then I'm like, oh my, it was so bizarre. And to have this kinship with like feeling like kind of like, I don't know, just feeling like a connection to David Lynch, and then randomly across the entire country, like about almost as far as you could get from my hometown, pulling into the other tiny town that he chose to film in for these two iconic situations. It was just like, it felt like a sign, like a universal sign to me. And I was blown away.
I'd be pinching myself for a few hours. Like, did this really happen?
We got up the next morning and went to Tweed's Diner, and they were like, yeah, the 25th anniversary was like last weekend. You just missed, like the town was full of people.
Wow.
And the lady at the diner, it's called Tweed's Diner, is the diner that he goes to. All over the place are like placards and just memorabilia from it. Anytime it was in the news, they have it cut out and clipped on the wall. You know, and they know what they've got. You know, you're paying $13 for a slice of pie. You know, it's of like, course. And I got the little cup, the coffee cup, and yeah, I was blown away because it's a one street town. You know, like just the few chances little of that. Shops.
It's meant to be. It's one of those like, you know what, you get your little fanboy day. You're like, this is your moment.
Yeah, and nobody else gave a shit. Like nobody, everyone was like, never watched it. I'm like, what? But yeah, I was reeling over that for years. I was just like, tell the story. And to me, I guess it means a lot more because of being from Wilmington and like having that connection. But man, I was just like, what are the odds? And I think the odds are pretty slim.
Please tell me you got a photo the next day when the lights were
out. Yeah. We went to I went all around. I got a photo of myself beside the diner, like the damn fine cup of coffee sign.
Unbelievable.
And then the lady there had a lot of knowledge. She was like, yeah, the Roadhouse is down here. If you go up and take a left, obviously we had to get to a show. So like, you know, we had another 4 hours to drive.
Pull the show, fuck the gig.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I was like, let's play here. Yeah. Somebody will show up. How cool would it be to do a tour where you just go to like the towns that these places were filmed at, you know, like go to a Haddonfield. You know, it was like hitting the Twin Peaks town, North Bend, and like.
I'm a massive Kevin Smith fan, and my dad for his 80th birthday, I took him to New York, and we went to New Jersey for a whole day. And I went to the Quick Stop, I went to his comic book shop, I went to where they filmed Chasing Amy. I know some people love or hate Kevin Smith, but I love him and his early work.
Red State is like brave. Such an amazing horror. I mean, it's a terrifying movie.
John Goodman in that film is like fucking brutal.
So good, man. I actually suggest that film to people a lot because it blew my mind, and just like knowing the history of what it was based on with the West Gay or whatever.
Church and
just like he did such a good job with that, and for him,
Michael Parks, my God, he should have got an Oscar for that.
Yeah. I mean, like the fact that movie breached such dark subject matter, and then to just tell you may not know, but like that's real. There are churches that stock up on guns. It's a real thing, you know. Like
that's the scariest thing about that film. It's not like a ghost or some monster. It's the evil is real, and if you ever go to like an abortion clinic, you can see these people outside with signs 100%. And weapons, and they're doing it still today.
The evil is real, and not only is it real, it's been warped in so many ways and told that it's righteous in so many ways that the evil feels justified. Like they feel justified, which is the most scary thing. I think films like Lord of Illusions, I don't know if you ever saw that. I'm sure
I've never seen it, no.
Oh, is that? I don't think it's Carpenter. It's obviously not, because you would have probably seen it if it was.
Yeah.
Lord of Illusions dives into this kind of occult subject matter, and there's this there's this kind of church following this dead prophet. But again, it's like when you've been brainwashed so much to think that like what you believe is true is worth killing for, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like that's like some of the scariest, because there's no telling someone, I mean, in this day and age where we are, there's no telling someone they're wrong, and there's no turning back from being wrong. You know, it's mostly like die on the hill, you know, like I believe it then, so I'm gonna have to believe it now, until you really deprogram someone to know that what they were thinking was like piled on and piled on and piled on. But when a horror or a thriller or anything breaches into that sort of brainwashing, because that's kind of the worst of it, you know, like when
there isn't much worse than that.
Yeah, that to me is true terror, like true horror, to be facing a villain that has like thinks that they are killing for a purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no real
just you saying it scares me.
Yeah, because that happens in this day and age a lot. You know, like people that go in my country and shoot up schools are either dealing with crazy mental health issues, or they're dealing with something that's been drilled into them until they feel they have a reason, and no one can ever justify the reason. You know, like it's that we could go down another rabbit hole. We'll do.
Yeah. It's crying out for me for us to talk again and do a couple of hours on this, because it's brilliant. But what I will do is I ask this question to everyone that comes on the podcast. We've got 8 minutes left, so I'm conscious.
Good. Yeah, because I'll ramble on, man.
No, it's good. It's good. I'm in my head. I'm like, we should do a fucking podcast every week.
Let's
genuinely,
do it.
I'm sitting here thinking, fucking hell, this chemistry is too fucking good for the first meeting. But
we'll do more.
We will. But what I do ask everybody that comes on the podcast, I've asked Anthony Hopkins, Mads Mikkelsen, Aubrey Plaza, Neil Marshall, everybody. They get to choose the last piece of music that's played on the episode. So once this is edited and up there on Spotify for the world to listen to, the guest gets to choose the outro music. So never is an episode like another episode.
Oh, wow.
But you're put on the spot. So as a musician, you've probably got 800 songs in your head right now. But it's a song that means the most to you, that comes to your heart and soul in your head before any other song. But I like the justification. But we have only got 7 minutes left.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, because I don't know why this song popped in my head first, but I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to tell you how to spell it, because I don't know how to spell the title, but it's an Aphex Twin song.
They're fucking music videos, man. They stay with me for years. Yeah,
this is gonna like be a real snoozer for a lot of your fans. But let me it's off Stereo, and it's called it's Asset Sana. It's the last track on Stereo.
Okay.
AISATSANA, and then in brackets 102. You know how he does his stuff is all. I've been an Aphex Twin fan forever, and this song just it's so meditative, and I put it on lots of playlists. It's like kind of a real palate cleanser. So yeah, let's go with that one.
What I love about it is when people pick stuff. I've heard Aphex Twin a lot of it, but I've not heard that track. And when I do, I'll then be listening to it for the next couple of weeks now, and all the Aphex Twin again, and delving deep back into their archives, because I've not heard Aphex Twin for probably 10 years, and that was only because I got the music video collection.
Oh man.
You know,
then you probably haven't given this album a spin, and I love it. But this last track is just like, it zones me out. It centers me. It's just a piano piece. It's not
I can't wait to hear this.
It's not his normal beeps and bops. It's just a really good cinematic feel. You know, it just flows, and there's birds in the background, which I wasn't
expecting this at all, so I can't wait.
No, yeah, you'll like it. You'll dig it. It's for a cinephile,
Yeah.
it really paints a picture, I think. or
Dude,
moves
it's
the
been an
reel.
absolute pleasure today. Genuinely, I've done 224 episodes, and one of my favorites was Alex Winter. We got to talk all about Bill and
Oh,
Ted
yeah.
and Lost Boys, but
Nice.
this, and I mean it now, has been the most fun, easiest, where I've had to remind myself that this is being recorded. I was like, oh
Yeah,
fuck, I'm
yeah.
like catching up with an old friend, but I would
Well,
love to do more with you another time.
that touches me. Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure.
And when you're in the UK, whenever the world can make that happen again,
And I will be in the UK soon.
yes, I will come to a show and I'll grab a beer and we'll sit down and talk and we'll just
Yeah.
put the world to rights.
Yeah, let's do it again. Let's do it again. It was very nice talking to you. Very nice to meet you.
See, I didn't build that up. There's my interview with me and Schuylar. And as I said at the start, what a guest. Someone that I think might be one of my longest single episodes, but we felt like we just got into it. The moment we started talking horror and films and just clicked, I really believe I could record at least another 10 episodes and still only be scraping the surface. Schuylar's an amazing human being. I love his songwriting. I love everything about him, and he was a dream guest. So I just want to say now a massive thank you for Schuylar for coming on the show. And now I've discovered this band, He Is Legend. I can't wait till the day that they come over in the UK. I'll be straight there, and I can't wait to see them live. Like I said at the start of today's interview, hopefully you've gone and checked this band out by now. If not, go and listen to their brand new album. It's only just come out. It's called Endless Hallway and is absolutely incredible. I've not stopped listening to it all week and it blows my mind. And it's one of those albums that you keep listening to and finding more stuff going on in the songs. You'll find yourself humming along. Great music to drive to as well. Just an amazing band. If you've enjoyed today's episode, what I ask you to do, and it costs absolutely nothing, is to share the episode. All the links for Facebook, Twitter and Instagram are on markandme.com. I make it so easy that all you need to do is click the button. When you see the episode up for He Is Legend, why not just retweet it? It's the click of 2 buttons. That's to say thanks for this episode. I don't want any money. I don't want anything else. Just share it. Also, if you're on Facebook, why not hit the share button? If you're on Instagram, put it as your stories. Someone might just see that artwork and go, oh, I'll check that out. And before you know it, they fell in love with the podcast, they go back and listen to 240 episodes, and they're there for the long run. And that, for me, is something that money can't buy. Word of mouth is huge. So if you're listening right now, yes, go and listen to this band, but also share this episode. I do have a Patreon account because to keep this podcast going, it costs me money every single month to host it on stuff like Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podomatic, and all these different channels and platforms. That does cost me money. So all I ask that if you've really enjoyed today's episode, I have a coffee page set up and a Patreon. Each and every month, thanks to my friends at Richer Sounds, I have some prizes that I give away to my patrons to say thank you. Also, I'm surprising people by sending out some incredible posters from Vice Press. People aren't expecting these. I saw this week someone else received a poster and was blown away. And these are just to say thanks for supporting me. You can do it for as little as £1 a month. For that, you're guaranteed 2 episodes every week. That's the minimum. You'll also get an exclusive episode that is only for Patrons each and every month, starting this month. You'll get a badge as soon as you sign up, stickers, and loads of exclusives that are coming just for my Patrons. It's your way of basically just buying me the equivalent of a coffee or just saying thank you. And it all goes right back into the podcast and allows me to go out there and record more and more episodes for you guys at home. So it's a win-win for everyone. A massive thank you again for everyone that's listened to today's episode. It really goes a long way. Let me see those retweets, let me see those shares, and make sure you listen to He Is Legend. So until next time, look after yourself, take care, listen to He Is Legend, be safe, and I'll speak to you all very soon.